A lot of us go through life thinking, this is just how people work, right? Right? We assume everyone else is also prepping emotionally for a phone call like it's a final exam, or avoiding conversations because the pace makes our brains explode, or unable to filter sounds out in a restaurant to stay focused on having a conversation. But wait, then why would anyone try to talk when they're out? Wait a second. And then you find out, nope, not everyone does that. That's just us. So in this video, we're going to talk about 5 things a lot of autistic adults assume are totally normal until they realize they're actually really common autistic traits. And no, not everyone does them. If you're late diagnosed or still figuring things out, this might help you make sense of patterns you've lived with your whole life. And if you've ever thought, wait, doesn't everyone do that? This one's for you. Rehearsing conversations in your head constantly. You're in the shower, scripting how you'll ask a coworker for something. You're in bed, rehashing that one awkward sentence you said 5 hours ago, or 5 years ago. You mentally rehearse every possible version of a conversation before it happens. And then people don't follow the script and your whole system crashes internally. Most of us grow up thinking this is just being prepared. But what's actually happening is pre-planning and anxiety management that's really common for autistic people. We're trying to reduce uncertainty by creating a map of the social landscape before we walk into it. Non-autistic people, they don't do this nearly as often or as intensely. They improvise, go with the flow. That's why small talk or casual chats seem to be more natural. They can adapt on the fly. Whereas autistic people often rehearse opening lines like we're about to pitch on Shark Tank, which I found out fairly recently has nothing to do with sharks or tanks, which is a little bit disappointing. So if your brain is constantly writing and rewriting conversations, editing your internal scripts with more interactions, kind of like updating your programming, it turns out you're not weird. It's your autistic brain trying to feel safe and make sense of a world that doesn't always follow a predictable path, especially in conversations. Needing hours to recover from a 10-minute conversation. After number 1, you can probably see why talking can be exhausting. Let's say you meet someone while you're out and about. They're lovely. It's a quick chat. It goes well. It was about 5 minutes. Most people, they carry on their day and might not even think about that. But you, if you can, your first plan is to go home, sit in your favorite spot with a weighted blanket, and collapse like you just finished a marathon. That's not social awkwardness or introversion. That's autistic social fatigue. Between reading facial expressions, managing eye contact, filtering background noise, trying to keep up with the pace of conversation and changing of topics, and then translating your internal thoughts into acceptable words, your brain is always working overtime. And I don't think we get overtime pay. I've had days where I only saw one person, and yet I'm completely wiped by 2 p.m. And the worst part? I can't explain why to anyone who isn't autistic. They just don't get it. So if you need rest, even after small social interactions, or just after one social event on a weekend, or in an entire month, that's not a flaw. It's your brain asking for recovery time. And that's allowed and highly recommended. Why would you call a show Shark Tank if it's not about fish or where they live? Being overwhelmed by background noise, even when you're not doing anything. You're sitting in your own kitchen, and suddenly you can feel your skin crawling. The hum of the fridge is too loud. The overhead lights are flickering. Someone outside coughed weirdly, and now your whole body is on edge. For most of us, we thought this was just being sensitive, but in reality, it's sensory overload. Autistic people often process all the input. We don't naturally tune things out the same way others do. There isn't one thing that dominates. It all dominates. And it dominates me. I used to think it was normal to hear every sound in a room at the same volume. So I could never figure out, why do people go to a bar to chat with other people? Or how can people enjoy going to restaurants and trying to listen to their own conversation when 30 others are talking to you? Because it isn't really in the background. It's all front and center. And all while you hear lips smacking and scraping silverware and the bubbling of the fish tank in the corner going, all at the same volume. But now, I know that's my brain failing to filter, not failing to focus. So I'm not overreacting when I'm overwhelmed by sensory input. I'm reacting accurately to an environment that my nervous system finds overwhelming. But at the same time, it really doesn't bother other people the same way. Like Debbie, she isn't overwhelmed and just better at hiding it, which I used to think was the case. Used to think she was so good at faking being fine there. Nope. For many autistic people, their brains process sounds differently, so it's not a barrage of sensory overload. They can filter out the important things and focus on those while the rest goes into the background. But those layered sounds and background noises are just a recipe for sensory overwhelm for lots of autistic people. Assuming everyone gets emotionally overloaded by small tasks. You've got a phone call to make, or a form to fill out, or a sandwich to eat because you haven't eaten all day. It's a small task, should take 5 minutes, but your body feels like it's preparing for battle. Your stomach's tight, your chest hurts, you're stalling and frozen. Most people don't have that level of executive and emotional buildup for minor tasks, but autistic adults, oh, we do. Especially if we've got the PDA profile of autism. So even eating that sandwich, your body calling for food, that feels like a demand. So sometimes you just don't want to. You can't. Hard to explain why. There might not even be a why, except that you can't get going to do it. Or picking up the phone to make that doctor's appointment that's been on my to-do list for 3 days or weeks. Not because I didn't want to, because I couldn't get past the mental wall of the steps involved. The questions I'll be asked. Thinking about the times because the 7 dates and times I already pre-planned, those might be taken. So overload around small tasks? Well, first off, what's small?
What are you calling small?
But really, it isn't you being difficult. It's your nervous system trying to manage a whole bunch of variables and changes and multi-step tasks at once. And add in challenges of executive functioning and poor interoception, and possibly a little bit of PDA or pathological demand avoidance, and what have you got? Overwhelmed by something like making an appointment. And now I'm paralyzed, and it's hours later, and still not done. Totally normal for an autistic person. Not for other people, apparently. Needing to mentally prepare for every transition, even tiny ones. You're deep in a task, and someone says,
"Hey, can we go in 5 minutes?"
Cue internal panic. You nod politely, but inside, you're scrambling to wind down your thoughts, switch gears, and figure out how to act ready. Autistic people often need transition time, even between small tasks, even if we like the next thing. That mental gear shift takes effort, and when it's rushed, it feels like being yanked out of a dream mid-sentence. I've needed 5 minutes to mentally prep just to stop reading and go eat. And even then, it still felt jarring. The transition that lots of autistic people struggle with that no one else really seems to, the change of state, like going from being dry before a shower to getting wet in the shower and then dry again. To me, that's 3 transitions for something that is so simple to everyone else. But the sensation of being wet and water trickling down my face apparently doesn't require a second thought to most people. For me, it's like gearing up for getting a tooth pulled or a root canal. Yes, I'm not going to end up with a hole in my mouth. But the mental preparation, sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's not. So if I seem like I'm stalling before starting that shower or going for a swim, I'm mentally prepping myself for all the transitions. The transitions that don't even register to most other people. So what I've learned is that needing time to shift gears is a valid need. And planning for it or giving myself time for it can change everything. And it's sometimes that small shift in understanding my normal is different than normal for other people. And that's okay. So if you relate to these, you're not weird. But not everyone does these things. And now I know these aren't the only things I do that I thought everyone else did, only to find out it was me. Just me. And many of my autistic buddies like you. You sure feel it on your way to the bathroom with a good long round of diarrhea. What do you want to just X that one out?